Who makes better electronic drum sets, Alesis or Yamaha? What's up? Justin here, welcome to 65 Drums, the place to keep on top of all things Edrum related. Hope you guys are all having an awesome day. I'm breaking down Alesis versus Yamaha today. This is a requested video. A lot of people have been asking me about this. Roland, Alesis, Yamaha, those are the big names in electronic drums right now. Cat Percussion, Simmons, Two Box, ATV, none of those companies are on the same level as far as popularity goes. So let's break it down. I'm gonna go over major pros and cons to buying the average Alesis and average Yamaha drum set. And near the end of the video, I'm gonna do some head-to-head comparisons, just all of the current drum sets that are on the market from both of those companies. Some of your kits that you might want me to compare may not be on this list because they're not currently being sold or they're being phased out slowly. Anyway, let's start with Alesis and just talk about the major pros and cons of that company. First, number one thing, Alesis has one goal in mind whenever they're making an electronic drum set. Make the largest drum set for that price point. That's their main number one goal. You can tell this by just pricing out an Alesis drum set and a Yamaha drum set at the exact same price point. The Alesis drum sets are always larger. Sometimes they're near twice as large. Everyone likes larger electronic drums these days. We're done with those 8-inch drum pads. I know some people in apartments or certain parts of Europe where houses just aren't that big. I understand maybe a smaller electronic drum set is something that you need. The average electronic drummer wants a larger drum set, and that's what Alesis provides. That's their number one thing that they have in their favor. And they have mesh drum pads, and historically, mesh drums have been very expensive, and Alesis makes very large, low-priced mesh drum sets. Unfortunately, in pursuit of this large electronic drum set goal that they have in mind, they sacrifice durability and sound quality. So your average Yamaha drum set will sound better, and it will last longer in the long run versus an Alesis drum set. There have been a lot of horror stories of especially the Alesis cymbals breaking. That's the number one culprit. It's not necessarily the drum pads most of the time. Most of the time it's just the cymbals that kind of suck because they're going through a company called Medeli. Medeli makes the same cymbals that are on Simmons drum sets, that are on Cat Percussion drum sets, that are on Medeli drum sets, and unfortunately they're just not that well made. They'll work for a couple of years depending on how much you play and how hard you hit, but they don't always last as long as a Yamaha drum set. So that's one thing that's sacrificed. And in general, Yamaha drum sets just sound better. What Yamaha does is they actually sample their own acoustic line. Because remember, Yamaha makes acoustic drums, they make electronic drums, so they take the sounds from their acoustic drum set and they just insert that into their drum modules. So that's the major advantage Alesis has. If you want a large electronic drum set, you're either gonna have to spend a lot of money on a high-end Yamaha drum set, or you can spend like $1,000 on an Alesis drum set and have the sizes that you want. But when you get that drum set, it's not gonna last as long, and in general, it's not gonna sound as good as that Yamaha option. So if you do buy Alesis, I always say get that 2 or 5 year warranty, whatever's available. That way you're protected and you're getting a large drum set. Now let's take a look at Yamaha. What are its major pros and cons? The obvious one I already said was that their drum sets are pretty small. Again, I'm gonna do head-to-head comparisons just in a second, but in general, Yamaha drums just are a lot smaller than the Alesis drum options out there. But on the flip side, they make very high quality drum sets. You'll have to sort of play an Alesis drum set and a Yamaha drum set side by side to understand what I mean. But Yamaha drums, they just feel nicer when you're playing them. You can tell that they're using higher quality rubber. They're using better drum racks. Their drum modules, they're just nicer. The sounds are nicer. So they're higher quality, but they're also small. They feel micro-sized when you compare it to certain Alesis drum sets. For some drummers, they need those larger playing sizes. I talk to a lot of drummers on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I keep hearing this over and over again. Justin, I need large cymbals, I need large snare, I need large floor toms, I need a large kick drum. And Yamaha does have those. They have plenty of drum sets like that, but they're all very, very expensive. So that's one big con against them. However, Yamaha does have a few things that it does very, very well. One thing that Yamaha does really well is apps. They have an app for like every single drum module that they sell. So that's the 400 series, the 500 series, the 700 series, the 900 series. Yamaha has apps for all of that. You're basically giving yourself a touch interface over the drum modules, and that's great. You can insert samples from your Dropbox account, just drag them over to your drum set on your iPad or your iPhone. You can assemble your own custom kits, you can EQ, you can tune, you can do all this great stuff on your phone. Some drummers really like that extra functionality. So The apps are very, very powerful. This is one thing that Yamaha does lead in the electronic drum industry. One thing that I don't like about these Yamaha drum sets, if you go to the high end, like the Yamaha DTX 700 and 900 line, like the really expensive stuff, yes, you've got that larger playing size that can compete with the Alesis versions, but the problem is that there's no drum shell. It's a literal electronic drum pad. This might not bother you, but I kind of want to have a drum shell. With the Alesis Strike line, you can theoretically change out that shell wrap if you do the work. So you could change it to blue or yellow, whatever kind of shell wrap you want if you do all the work to cut that out yourself. With Yamaha, you're stuck with the look. Also, since those aren't mesh drum heads, the pads are great, they feel amazing, and they're actually a little bit quieter than mesh pads, in my opinion, in my experience. The only thing is you can't change how they feel. You can't tune the head up and down because there is no head. It's a slab of silicone, so that's one thing that they don't have going for them. One great thing about the pads that Yamaha has though, on the higher end ones, they have little tuning knobs, so you can tune the pads up and down, and that ties in via software to their drum modules. And then one other great thing about Yamaha is that all their cymbal pads, except for maybe their hi-hats, they all have 3 zones. So even the crash cymbals have bell zones, and Alesis doesn't have that. Also, a lot of Yamaha snare drum pads, a lot of them have 3 zones on them, so you'll get 2 rim zones and then the drum head. So that means you can assign 2 sounds of the rims and then still have your snare sound on that drum if you want. So it gives you a lot more flexibility sound-wise. One con against both these companies is that their latency is not that great. ATV and Roland, they lead the industry as far as low latency goes. Yamaha, just because of the way their pads are designed, running to their drum module, they just have very, very high latency. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you're shopping for electronic drums. So those are the big pros and cons between those two companies, in my opinion. Alesis gives you huge electronic drum sets for pretty low prices when you compare them against Yamaha, but they're just not going to be as high quality. The build quality isn't there. It's not going to last you as long as that Yamaha drum set. And the sound quality in the Yamaha drum sets is a little bit better. You have app selections, you get more zones usually on a Yamaha drum set. So there are some things going for Yamaha, there's some stuff going for Alesis. It really depends on who you are. I can't make a blanket statement that everyone should buy a Yamaha drum set or everyone should buy an Alesis drum set. There's a lot of gray area here. But let's jump over to the head-to-head comparisons and see what might be the best in every single price point just for the average drummer. Just take this information I'm giving you and make a decision of your own. This is just an opinion. All right, so let's start with 300 bucks. We got the Alesis Nitro. I've played this one. I made a dedicated video on this one. I'll link below if you want to go watch it. It's the best one for 300 bucks out there. There aren't a lot of great options. In fact, Yamaha doesn't even have a $300 electronic drum set. They have the DTX 400K, it's $400, and I just can't recommend this one because it doesn't have a kick drum tower. It has a little foot controller thing there. It takes a little bit getting used to, and you kind of have to have a kick drum tower, so I can't really recommend that one. So the Alesis Nitro, it wins, even though it's less expensive. It actually gives you more port selections. You can plug in 2 extra pads. It's got a MIDI in and out and USB MIDI. This actually has quite a few things going for it. Now let's jump over to 500 bucks. This is the Alesis Forge. It's the exact same thing with the Nitro, except that it has an 11-inch snare and it's got a new drum module with twice as many sounds. I made a dedicated versus video between the Forge and the Nitro. If you want to go check that out, I'll link it below if you want to go watch that. But yeah, I would definitely take the Forge. This is where the comparison gets a little bit hairy. It's kind of hard to decide between these two sets. We got the Yamaha DTX 430K right here. It's basically the same thing as the DTX 400K, except that it has the kick drum tower. So yeah, it's got the kick drum tower, which that's the thing I was complaining about on the 400K. But the problem with this set is that it's got a smaller snare versus the Forge. And the pads, the rubber material, is really, really tough. It's very, very tough rubber. The Alesis pads, even though they may not be as high quality, they just feel nicer to play on. So between these two kits, it's kind of a toss-up. The Yamaha drum set's probably gonna last you longer. The Alesis one, it's got a larger rubber snare and it's got a drum module that has more sounds inside of it. So it's really your choice on these two kits. Let's move on to $700. We've got the Alesis Command. Now, Yamaha does not have a drum set at this price to compare it to, and this one's just in a really awkward middle zone. At 700 bucks, you get a snare and a kick drum that are both mesh. Those are great big upgrades. I've played this drum set. I did a first impressions video on this that I'll link below if you want to know all the details. But I don't really recommend this drum set because it's in that awkward middle zone. It's not as cheap as an Alesis Forge, so you can't just buy it on a whim. And if you just spend an extra 100 bucks, you'll get a kit that's twice as good. So it's in this awkward middle zone, so I can't really recommend it, unfortunately. Now let's take a look at this Alesis Command X, 800 bucks. This thing is exactly the same thing. It's got the same module, it's got the same pads. The only difference is that it's colored red and it gives you an extra crash cymbal. So you got 100 extra bucks for another crash cymbal. That's the biggest upgrade there really is. That doesn't really seem like it's worth an extra 100 bucks in my personal opinion. Now, if we look at the Yamaha side, this is where competition really starts heating up. You got the DTX 522K at $800. This thing is a rock star for $800. I would take this one over the TD11K. You get 3-zone crash cymbal, 3-zone ride cymbal, the DTX silicone snare, and you got a drum module that's better than the Alesis Forge drum module in my opinion. So I feel like this set is a lot better than the Alesis Command X. I know you don't get that extra crash cymbal, but all these cymbals right here are really crappy. They're all pretty much exactly the same pad, not very high quality. This Yamaha drum set right here will last you longer, and it's just a better overall kit. So let's move up to $1,000. The big upgrade here on the 532K versus the 522K is that you got a hi-hat on a hi-hat stand, which is really important to me. I like that. It makes it feel more like an acoustic drum set. And you got a larger crash cymbal up there. So those are the two upgrades. I feel like it is worth the extra 200 bucks to get two pads that are a lot nicer. So if you got $1,000 that's a decent kit for $1,000. On the Alesis side, they don't really have anything at that exact price point. They have the Alesis Crimson Model 2 and the DM10 MK2 Studio Kit. That's a really long name. They're both at $1,100. I'm not really sure why they have these two sets competing at each other at the exact same price point. The main difference I can see is that the snare pad on the Crimson 2 is larger and it's on a dedicated snare stand, which comes with the package, by the way. You don't have to buy that separately. I've played the Crimson Model 2. I made a dedicated first impressions video on it, and if you want to know all the details on this, which I'll link below, I would probably buy this one just because I want that larger snare pad. The cymbals here are very large. You got that 3-zone ride cymbal, just really large playing surfaces. This is where you'll start to see those size differences between Alesis and Yamaha really start to show. There's a Yamaha drum set in this ballpark price range. It's the DTX 542K. This drum set is completely weird. I really have no idea what Yamaha was thinking. You lose that really sweet hi-hat and the really sweet crash cymbal upgrade that you got on the 532K, and instead they're giving you 3 upgraded tom pads. I do not see the need to buy this drum set. I'd rather have that hi-hat pad and the larger crash cymbal. You're paying an extra 188 bucks to get nicer tom pads. I really don't understand that. I'd just rather have the better cymbals over here. Really, just my opinion. It's up to you whether or not you'd rather buy between those two. If I had to choose between the Crimson, which is my pick on the Alesis side, versus this Yamaha drum set, I would probably take the DTX 532K over here. I realize it's smaller, but I would just rather take the durability and the better sounds, just my personal opinion. Now moving up to $1,300, we have the Alesis DM10 MK2 Pro Kit. This drum set is extremely mysterious because Alesis hasn't released any sort of demos on it. We don't know how it sounds or any of that. They're selling this, but no one has any clue what it sounds like until you actually buy the thing. Now we do know all the pads are exactly the same as the Alesis DM10X. This drum set is absolutely massive when you compare it to something over on the Yamaha side. Now on Sweetwater.com they have a special version of the DTX 542K. That's the extended version, so you get an extra floor tom, 400 bucks. Look at this drum set versus the DM10 MK2 Pro Kit. As you can see, the size differences between these two kits is massive. This is one of those things where it's really up to you. I know that the cymbals on the DM10 version just aren't going to last forever. If you get this one with a warranty, maybe take this one. It really depends on you. So let's move on to 1,500 bucks. Alesis doesn't have an option at this price point, but Yamaha does. We got the DTX 562K electronic drum set. Now, again, when you're comparing this versus saving 200 bucks and buying the Alesis DM10 version, you're starting to see again why Alesis is famous for large electronic drum sets. It's really hard on paper to choose the Yamaha drum set versus this Alesis drum set. But the cymbals, they don't last forever, unfortunately. So again, I would only buy this one with a warranty because at 1,300 bucks, you're not buying this as a cheap hobby kit anymore. So you kind of have to be serious and buy something that will last you a little bit longer. So if you're gonna buy this one, I would recommend picking it up with a warranty. Again, this is where your opinion on what you need as a drummer comes into play, how much you're actually gonna be playing this. So let's move on to the next kit, the Alesis Strike at 1,700 bucks. There are no Yamaha drum sets until 2000, so I'm gonna stop talking about them for a second, just to focus on the Strike and Strike Pro, because both these kits are nearly the same. The Strike Pro is $2,300, and the original Strike, it's $1,700. This is a really, really hairy situation that I'm going to try to explain to the best of my ability. Before I go any further, I have not played either version of the Strike. There are no dealerships in Ohio that actually carry it. You're not going to get first-hand experience in what I'm about to say. I'm just talking about what I've heard from other owners that do own this or have played it. All right, so let's get into this. The Alesis Strike is a spec beast. Nearly everything you want from a drum set at around 2,000 bucks, this has. You know, tons and tons of very large pads. You get an extra crash cymbal that even something like a Yamaha DTX 900 series or a Roland TD 50 kV doesn't have. It has so many pads, really large playing sizes. You got a 14-inch snare. This has so many things going for it. It's a spec beast. After getting messages from a couple of different Strike owners and from being in an Alesis Strike Facebook group where I'm watching owners talk about their kit issues all the time, here's how I can best describe the situation. You have one group of Alesis Strike owners that swear by this, would swear by it to the grave. They think it's the greatest drum set of all time. And then you have another set of Alesis Strike owners that are just really disappointed. And there's several reasons why this other group of owners is disappointed. Number one, this is a cheaper drum set than a Roland TD 50 or TD 30 or a Yamaha DTX 900 line. So the components are cheaper. Like the rubber on the cymbals isn't as nice as Yamaha and Roland flagships. That's one complaint. The biggest complaint is probably the sounds and, more importantly, the hi-hat functionality. Apparently Alesis hasn't figured out how to make a hi-hat on a dedicated hi-hat stand work properly. Roland has figured it out, Tubox has figured it out, ATV has figured it out, Yamaha has figured it out, and Alesis is just really struggling here. Apparently it just doesn't function like a normal regular hi-hat. You have one group of owners that they've installed the updates, they've tweaked some threshold and sensitivity, whatever settings, and they say they've gotten it to work great. And then you've got the other owners that claim to have spent an hour or hours working on making the hi-hat work. They've downloaded all the updates, and no matter what they do, they can't get the hi-hat to work. I feel like there are way too many people complaining about this hi-hat for it just to be all chalked up to user error. The weird thing about this whole situation is that there's a giant split between all the owners. You got the people that love the drum set, and you got the people that really don't like the drum set at all. So it really depends on you and what unit that you get in the mail. I feel like buying an Alesis Strike right now is kind of a crapshoot. There have been a bunch of people that have had to send stuff back to Alesis to get it repaired or to get a new unit back. So this whole situation is really complicated. On the one side, you could get a unit that works perfectly, and this could be the most amazing, low-cost, large electronic drum set ever. There are plenty of people that are in that situation. And then there are plenty of people in the other situation where they just wish they had never bought the Alesis Strike in the first place. Like even little foam pieces inside of the drum shells are just falling over just because they used poor glue in these things. Anyway, it's a big mess, and since I haven't played it yet, I can't confirm either side. So I'm just telling you what I've been hearing about it. I don't know, I just don't really feel confident in just recommending to everybody and their grandmother to go buy this thing right now. So that's how I view the situation. You're gonna have to decide for yourself whether or not you wanna play it or buy it, whatever. So let's move on to the Yamaha DTX 720K. This is sitting at 2,000 bucks, and this is a solid drum set. It really is. The problem is those toms are really, really tiny. I believe it's got the same snare pad as the 500 series. So what you're really paying for here is a much nicer kick drum pad. That's solid. I really do like that kick drum pad. And then you've got a nice drum module. Those are the big upgrades that you're really paying that 2,000 bucks for. When you start getting to the nicer pads, unfortunately, you're jumping to $3,500. I've played a version of this, the DTX 790, which isn't currently being sold, unfortunately. I made a first impressions video on that. It's really similar to this kit. But anyway, 3,500 bucks. This is a sweet spot in value as far as the Yamaha timeline because you're getting a lot of large pads. You're basically getting the DTX 900 flagship without the flagship drum module. That's kind of what you're getting here as far as pads go. These are the pads that I wish were on like the $2,000 drum set, but unfortunately it's up here at 3,500 bucks. So I would have to say this drum set is probably the pinnacle of value as far as Yamaha drum sets go. You can go all the way up to the Yamaha DTX 950 line. You'll get an extra floor tom, a better drum module. I think maybe one of the ride cymbals or something might be larger. But really, this is the sweet spot as far as value goes. The sounds don't really get that much better in the 900 drum module. It's an aging flagship that needs to be replaced and updated with something new. So yeah, if you want to get a nice high-end Yamaha drum set, I would buy the DTX 760K. So those are my thoughts on the comparison between both of these companies. You know, there are a lot of instances where Alesis is better in certain places and Yamaha is better in other places. As a general thing, I lean towards Yamaha just because they're higher quality drum sets and I want something that will last in the long term. Other drummers don't see it that way, and that's completely fine. This is an opinion video. It's just meant to give you data so you can make a buying decision for yourself. So anyway, let me know what you guys think of this comparison down in the comments below. I'm gonna be reading them, really interested to hear your thoughts. Hope you guys all have an awesome day, and I'll see you in a few.